at 65 years of age from end-stage heart disease. But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers, and what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. It talks about static. No, it talks about my grandma was on the death's door. Frances Greger, my grandmother, arrived in one of Pritikin's early sessions in a wheelchair. Mrs. Greger had heart disease, angina, claudication. Her condition so bad she could not even walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she's not only out of her wheelchair, she was static. She was walking 10 miles a day. I think he was cutting off. You know, maybe it's just a wiggly connection or something. Well, now that you're looking at it, it's fine. All right, well, we can keep trying it. Okay.
Keep moving on the stage. I think it has to do with how you're moving.
Stand there.
All right, we'll keep plugging away here. So here's a picture of my grandma at her grandson's wedding, 15 years after doctors had abandoned her to die. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65 thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet until age 96. Continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. That's why I started nutritionfacts.org. That's why I wrote the book How Not to Die. That's why all the proceeds from all my books are donated to charity. I just want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family. Now, years later, when Dr. Dean Ornish published his landmark lifestyle heart trial, proving with something called quantitative angiography that indeed heart disease could be reversed, arteries opened up without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program, I assumed this was going to be the game changer. I mean, my family had seen it with their own eyes, but here it was, in black and white, published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, yet nothing happened. So, wait a second, effectively the cure to our number one killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored. What else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. For those of you who are familiar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world, so busy folks like you don't have to. Very nice. I think you'll follow the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings, new videos, and articles I upload every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads, no corporate sponsorships, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles every day, and now it's a green screen of death. But of course it's back now. But I swear! Really? What am I? Alright. I mean, like maybe the cable coming out is a little loose or something?
If people touch that,
Okay, so don't break.
don't break.
Blaming the people, alright. Okay, new videos and articles every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. All right, so where did Pritikin get his evidence from? Well, a network of missionary hospitals set up throughout sub-Saharan Africa uncovered what may be one of the most important advances in health, the fact that many of our major and commonest diseases were universally rare, like heart disease. In the African population of Uganda, for example, coronary artery disease was almost non-existent. You say, wait a second. Our number one killer, almost non-existent, what were they eating? Well, they're eating lots of vegetables and grains and greens, and their protein almost entirely from plant sources. And they had the cholesterol levels to prove it, very similar to what one sees in modern day plant eaters. I've never been able to point with my foot anymore. That's Say, wait a second, maybe they were just dying early from something else, never lived long enough to get heart disease. No. There's age-matched heart attack rates in Uganda versus St. Louis. Out of 632 autopsies in Uganda, only one myocardial infarction. Out of 632 age and gender matched autopsies in Uganda, only 136. 136 myocardial infarctions. More than 100 times the rate of our leading killer. In fact, they were so blown away, went back, did another 800 autopsies in Uganda, still just that one small healed infarct. Meaning it wasn't even the cause of death out of 1,427 patients, less than 1 in 1,000, whereas here, heart disease is an epidemic. Atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries, is a disease that begins in childhood by age 10. Nearly all children raised on a standard American diet already have what are called fatty streaks building inside their arteries. These streaks then turn into plaques in our 20s, get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us off. In our heart, it's called a heart attack. In our brain, the same disease process can cause a stroke. So if there is anyone here this afternoon older than age 10, then the question is not whether or not to eat healthy to prevent heart disease, it's whether you want to reverse the heart disease you likely already have, whether you know it or not. But is that even possible? You know, when people took patients with heart disease, put them on the kind of plant-based diet followed by populations that did not get epidemic heart disease, their hope was, hey, maybe we can slow the disease down a little bit, maybe even stop it. Instead, something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries, without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, were just never given the chance. This remarkable improvement in blood flow to the heart muscle itself, there on the left, was after just, if you can read that, 3 weeks of plant-based nutrition. Let me share with you what's been called the best-kept secret in all of medicine. Best-kept secret in medicine is that sometimes, under the right conditions, the body can actually heal itself. You know, if you whack your shin really hard on the coffee table and get all red hot, painful, swollen, inflamed blood, will heal naturally if you just stand back, let your body work its magic. What if you whacked your shin in the same place day after day? In fact, 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You'd never heal. You'd go to your doctor and be like, my shin hurts. And your doctor would be like, no problem. Whip out the pad, write a prescription for painkiller. You start whacking your shin 3 times a day. It surely hurts like heck, but it all feels so much better with those pain pills on board. Thank heavens for modern medicine. It's like people who take nitroglycerin pills for crushing chest pain. Tremendous relief, but not doing anything to treat the underlying cause of the disease. Our body wants to come back to health if we let it, but if we keep re-damaging ourselves, our body may never heal. It's like smoking. One of the most amazing things I learned in all my medical training was that within about 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker. Isn't that amazing? Your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually, it's almost as if you never started smoking at all. And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starts to wham! First cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite. When all we had to do all along, the miracle cure is just stand back, get out of the way, stop re-injuring ourselves, and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health. Ooh. I got some water down there. Thank you. I got some bottomless water down there. The human body is a self-healing machine, right? Now, sure, you can choose moderation and hit yourself with a smaller hammer. But why beat yourself up at all? This is nothing new. Look, American Heart Journal, 1977, cases like Mr. FW here. Heart disease so bad, couldn't even make it to the mailbox. Started eating healthier. A few months later, he was climbing mountains, no pain. Oh, all right. Now, there are these fancy new classes of anti-angiogenic drugs on the market now, cost thousands of dollars, but hey, at the highest dose, may be able to extend exercise duration as long as 33 and a half seconds. Doesn't look like those undergoing the drug route are going to be climbing mountains anytime soon. See, plant-based diets aren't just safer and cheaper, they can work better because you're treating the underlying cause of the disease. Now, normally I just want to move on to killer number 2, cancer, talk about the role diet may play in preventing, arresting, and reversing each of our top 15 killers. Of course, be happy to. No, it's fine now. Be happy to answer questions about any of these, but I do want to take the advantage of the time we have together to get into discussion and answer everybody's questions. So I'm going to skip down through a few here, but in a certain sense, what more does one need to know? There's only one diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of places, a plant-based diet. So anytime someone tries to sell you on some new diet, do me a favor. Ask them a simple question. Everybody's saying, has this diet been proven to reverse heart disease? The number one reason me and all my loved ones will die? If the answer is no, why would you even consider? If that's all a plant-based diet can do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet to prove it otherwise? And the fact that it can also be so effective in preventing, arresting, and reversing other leading killers, like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure, seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. And in fact, let me cover those quickly. Diabetes, for example, we know since the 1930s, take a small group of diabetics, put them on a formal plant-based diet, and over a period of 5 years, a quarter of them were able to get off their insulin altogether. You say, yeah, well, wait a second. Plant-based diets are relatively low-calorie diets. Maybe their diabetes just got better because they lost so much weight. To tease that out, what you have to do is put people on a plant-based diet, but force them to eat so much food that they don't lose any weight. Then we can see if there's some unique benefits to plant-based eating beyond just all the easy weight loss. Well, we'd have to wait a few decades, but here it is. Subjects are weighed every day. They started to lose weight. They're made to eat more food. In fact, so much more food, some of the participants have problems eating it all. They're like, oh, not another salad. Oh. But eventually they adapted. So, no weight loss despite restricting meat, eggs, dairy, and junk. Okay, so with zero weight loss, was there any benefit for their diabetes? Well, insulin needs were cut 60% across the board. Half the diabetics ended off all their insulin altogether. Wow, how many years did that take? No, 16 days. 16 days later, we're talking diabetics who've had diabetes for as long as 20 years, injecting 20 units of insulin a day, and then 13 days later on none. Diabetics for 20 years, then off all insulin in less than 2 weeks. Diabetes for 20 years because no one had told them about a plant-based diet. Right? For decades, they were 13 days away at any time from being free. Here's participant number 15. 32 units of insulin on the controlled diet, then 18 days later on none. Lower blood pressures on 32 units less insulin. That's the power of plants. Right? And remember, this was with zero weight loss. His body just started working that much better when provided with the right fuel. And what are the side effects? Oh, how about cholesterol dropping like a rock to under 150 on average, making them effectively heart attack proof in the bargain, right? So just like asking a patient to make moderate changes in diet will only net you moderate benefits in terms of cholesterol reduction. How moderate do you want your diabetes? Right? Everything in moderation is a truer statement than many people realize, right? Asking diabetics to make moderate changes in diet can leave them with moderate blindness, moderate kidney failure, moderate amputation, maybe just a few toes or something. Moderation in all things is not necessarily a good thing. There's this famous study in a published in a journal called Cell Metabolism, which reported to show that diets high in meat, eggs, and dairy could be harmful to health as smoking you see how when everyone's faces flicker, that's the screen going on and off? I don't know if you can see, it's just like a... Checking connection. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Don't worry, you can step on people, doctor in the house.
All right.
We don't get that. Sound good? Yeah, why not? All right. Which reported to show that people in middle age eating lots of meat, eggs, and dairy 4 times as likely to die from cancer and diabetes. That was true for cancer, but if you look at the study itself, that was not true for diabetes. Those eating lots of animal protein in middle age should have 4 times the risk of dying from cancer. They had from diabetes had 73 times the risk of dying from diabetes. Now those that chose moderation, only eating a moderate amount of animal protein, they just had 23 times the risk of death from diabetes. The academic institution where the study was done sent out a press release with a memorable opening line that chicken wing you're eating could be as deadly as a cigarette. Explaining that, look, quadrupling one's risk of dying from cancer, that's comparable to what one might get smoking cigarettes. So what was the reaction in the medical community to this revelation? Diet, high meat, eggs, dairy can be harmful to smoking. Well, one nutrition scientist says it's potentially dangerous to tell people about this study. Why? Because a smoker might think, hey, why bother quitting smoking? My ham and cheese sandwich is just as bad for me. So, shh. Don't tell anyone about the whole meat and dairy thing. Shh. That reminds me of this famous Philip Morris cigarette ad that tried to downplay the risk by saying, hey, you think secondhand smoke is bad, increasing the risk of lung cancer by 19%. Well, hey, drinking 1 or 2 glasses of milk every day, maybe 3 times as bad, 62% increased risk of lung cancer. Doubling your risk frequently cooking with oil, tripling your risk by eating non-vegetarian, multiplying your risk 6-fold if you eat lots of meat and dairy. So, they conclude, let's keep some perspective here. The risk from secondhand smoke may be well below that of other everyday activities. So breathe deep. That's like saying, yeah, don't worry about getting stabbed because getting shot so much worse. How about neither? 2 risks don't make a right. Of course, you'll note Philip Morris stopped throwing dairy into the bus once they purchased Kraft Foods. Just a coincidence, I guess. All right, let me skip on down to high blood pressure. 78 million Americans affected, and that's about 1 in 3 adults. As we get older, our pressures get higher and higher, such that by age 60, the majority of us have high blood pressure. So wait a second. If most of us get high blood pressure when we get older, maybe it's less a disease and more just a natural, inevitable consequence of aging. No, we've noticed since the 1920s that high blood pressure did not occur. 1,000 people had their blood pressure measured in rural Kenya. A typical Kenyan diet, something like this. Lots of beans and corn, beans, vegetables, fruit, and greens. Our pressures go up as we age. Their pressures go down. And the lower the better. We now have evidence that even people under 120 over 80 may benefit from blood pressure reduction. So the ideal blood pressure. The no benefit from reducing it further, blood pressure, maybe 110 over 70. What? Is it even possible to get pressures down to 110 over 70? It's not just possible, it's normal for those living healthy enough lives. A few years this rural Kenya hospital, 1,800 patients were admitted. How many cases of high blood pressure did they find? 0. Wow, they must have low rates of heart disease, right? No, they had no rates of heart disease. Not a single case of atherosclerosis. Our number 1 killer was found. Rural China, same thing. About 110 over 70 their entire lives. 70-year-olds with same blood pressure as 16-year-olds. wait a second. African diet, Asian diet, vastly different diets. What they shared in common is that they were plant-based day to day, with meat only eaten on special occasions. Wait a second. Why do we think it's the plant-based nature of their of diets that was so protected? Because in the Western world, according to the American Heart Association, the only folks getting down that low on average were those eating strictly plant-based diets, coming in at about 110 over 65. Here's the largest study of plant-based eaters to date, the study of 89,000 folks in an obscure state called California. Comparing non-vegetarians, so-called semi-vegetarians or flexitarians, those that eat meat just a few times a month, but otherwise not. Compared to pesco vegetarians, those that eat no meat except fish, compared to those who don't eat any meat at all, compared to those who eat no meat, eggs, or dairy. Obviously, the meat industry is like twiddling with the cord here, but it's okay. Now these were California Seventh-day Adventists, and so even the non-vegetarians actually didn't eat a lot of meat. Compared to the general public, tended not to smoke, tended to exercise, eat lots of fruits and vegetables. This is a really healthy cohort of meat eaters, but still, we see this stepwise drop in high blood pressure to more and more plant-based people ate. Same thing with diabetes. Same thing with obesity, right? So yeah, sure, you can throw the vast majority of your risk out the window by eating strictly plant-based, but it's not all or nothing. It's not black or white. Any movement we can make along this spectrum towards eating healthier can accrue significant benefits. You show this experimentally. You take vegetarians, you give them meat, and their blood pressure goes up. You do it the other way. You take people who are already eating, remove meat from the diet, and their blood pressures go down within 7 days. And this is after the vast majority had to stop their blood pressure medications or reduce their blood pressure medications. They had to. I mean, you can't be on multiple blood pressure medications with normal blood pressure. You drop your pressures too low, you fall over, hurt yourself, get dizzy, right? All right. I mean, when you treat the cause and eliminate the cause, then obviously you can be over-medicated very quickly. Lower pressures on fewer drugs. That's the power of plants. So, does the American Heart Association recommend a no-meat diet? They recommend this low-meat diet, the so-called DASH diet. So wait a second, when this DASH diet was being created, were they just not aware of this landmark research done by Harvard's Frank Sachs? No. They were aware. The chair of the design committee that came up with the DASH diet was Frank Sachs. See, the DASH diet was created with the number one goal of capturing the blood pressure and lowering benefits of a more plant-based diet, yet contain enough animal products to make it palatable to the general population. They didn't think the public could handle the truth. Now, I mean, you can see what they were thinking, right? Just like drugs never work unless you actually take them. Diets never work at all unless you actually eat them, right? And so they said, well, look, we can't tell everyone to eat strictly plant-based. How many people are going to do that? If we soft pedal the message, come up with some kind of compromise diet, well, then on a population scale, maybe we'll do more good. Okay. Tell that to the 1,000 American families a day that lose a loved one to high blood pressure. Maybe it's time to start telling the American public the truth, which is that most deaths are preventable in the United States and related to nutrition. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the largest study of risk factors for disease in history funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the number one cause of death in these United States is American diet. Leading cause of disability in the United States is our diet. Cigarettes now only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills many, many more. So if most deaths are preventable related to nutrition, number one cause of death and disability, well then obviously nutrition is the number one thing taught in medical school, right? I mean, obviously it's the number one thing your doctor talks to you about in every single visit, right? Wait a second, how could there be this disconnect between the science and the practice of medicine? Well, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine yourself a smoker back in the 1950s. You know, back in the 50s, the average per capita cigarette consumption was 4,000 cigarettes a year. So the average person walking around smoked half pack a day, on average. The media was telling people to smoke. Famous athletes agreed. Even Santa Claus wanted you to smoke. I mean, look. You want to keep fit and stay slender, so make sure to smoke and eat lots of hot dogs to stay trim, and eat lots of sugar to stay slim and trim. A lot better than that apple down there. I mean, sheesh, right? But apples do connote goodness and freshness, reads one internal tobacco industry memo, which brings up many possibilities for youth. They want to make apple-flavored cigarettes for kids. Shameless, right? For digestion's sake, we should smoke. I mean, no curative power is claimed by Philip Morris, but hey, better be safe than sorry, and smoke. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere. No woman ever says, no, they're so round, so firm, so fully packed. I mean, after all, John Wayne smoked them until he got lung cancer and died. You know, back then, even the paleo folks were smoking. And so were the doctors. Now, this is not to say there wasn't controversy within the medical profession. Sure, you know, some doctors smoked Camels, but others preferred Lucky. So it wasn't a little disagreement there. The leader of the U.S. Senate agreed. Who would want to give their throat a vacation? Not a single case of throat irritation. How could there be when cigarettes are just as pure as the water you drink? Maybe over in Flint, Michigan. But don't worry, if your throat does get a little irritated, your doctor can always write you a prescription for cigarettes. This is in the Journal of the American Medical Association. So when the American Medical Association is on record saying smoking on balance is good for you, not just neutral, but good for you, where could you turn back then if you just wanted the science? What's the new data advanced by science? Well, she was too tired for fun, and then she smoked a Camel. Babe Ruth spoke of proof positive medical science, that is, when he still could speak, before he died of throat cancer. Now, by some miracle back then, there was some kind of smokingfacts.org website that could deliver the science directly, bypassing commercially corruptible institutional filters. You would have become aware of studies like this. There's an Adventist study out of California published in 1958 that showed that non-smokers had at least 90% less lung cancer than smokers. But this wasn't the first. When famed surgeon Michael DeBakey was asked why studies back in the 30s linking lung cancer and smoking were simply ignored off the face of the earth, he had to remind people what it was like back then. We were a smoking society. It was everywhere. It was in the movies, it was on airplanes, medical meetings were one heavy haze of somebody's head. One heavy haze of smoke. Smoking was, in a word, normal. So, back to our thought experiment. If you're a smoker in the 50s in the know, what do? I mean, with access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests your smoking habit not so good for you. So do you change or do you wait? I mean, if you wait until your doctor tells you between puffs to quit, you could have cancer by then. If you wait until the powers that be officially recognized, like the Surgeon General did in the subsequent decade, you could be dead by then. It took more than 7,000 studies in the deaths of countless smokers before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out. You think maybe after the first 6,000 studies, could give little people a heads up or something? Powerful industry. Maybe we should have stopped smoking after the 700th study like this came out. But as a smoker in the 50s, on one hand, you had all of society, the government, the medical profession itself telling you to smoke. On the other hand, all you had was the science. If you've been aware of studies like this. All right, so let's fast forward about 60 years or so. There's a new advanced study out of California warning Americans about something else they may be putting in their mouths. Of course, there's not one study. Put all the studies together. Deaths from all causes put together. Many of our dreaded diseases significantly lower among those eating more plant-based. Right? So, instead of someone going along with America's smoking habits in the 50s, imagine you or someone you know going along with America's eating habits today. What do? I mean, with access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests eating habits are not so good for you. So do you change? Or do you wait? I mean, if you wait until your doctor tells you between bites to change, it could be too late. In fact, even after the Surgeon General's report came out, the AMA went on record officially refusing to endorse it. Why? Could it have been because they were just handed a $10 million check from the tobacco industry? Maybe. Okay, so we can see why the AMA was sucking up to the tobacco industry. But why weren't more individual doctors speaking up? There were a few ahead of their time speaking up against industries that were killing millions, but why not more? Maybe it's because the majority of physicians themselves smoke cigarettes. Just like the majority of physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. What was the AMA's rallying cry back then? Everything in moderation. Extensive scientific studies have proven smoking in moderation, oh, that's fine. Sound familiar? You know, the food industry uses the same tobacco industry tactics, twisting the science, misinformation. The same scientists for hire paid to downplay the risks of cigarettes and secondhand smoke were the same, and toxic chemicals were the same hired by the National Confectioners Association to downplay the risks of candy, and the same paid for by the meat industry to downplay the risks of meat. Whereas animal products and processed foods are wiping out about 14 million people every year. Those of us in this room involved in this evidence-based nutrition revolution, we're talking about 14 million lives in the balance. Maybe plant-based eating should be considered kind of the nutritional equivalent to stopping smoking. How long do we have to wait, though, before the CDC says, don't wait for overnight surgery, before starting to eat healthy as well? Until the system changes, we need to take personal responsibility for our own health, for our family's health. We can't wait until society catches up to the science again because it's a matter of life and death. You know, Dr. Kim Williams became president of the American College of Cardiology. He was asked in an interview why he himself follows the same diet he recommends to all his patients, a strictly plant-based diet. I don't mind dying, Dr. Williams replied. I just don't want it to be my own fault. Thank you so much. So Dan Buettner popularized this notion of these blue zones for National Geographic. Areas around the world with the best longevity, the greatest percentage of centenarians, people who live over 100, and who are thriving at that kind of age. And the question is, well, what do they all share in common? And there's a number of non-dietary factors, social factors, like not smoking, etc. But in terms of diet, what they all shared in common was that they were plant predominant. They're mostly plant-based diets, and their primary protein source were legumes, some form of bean. So in Okinawa, Japan, it was tofu, and Mediterranean is a different kind of bean. Plant protein source. And so you can look to the Okinawa Japanese, for example, the second longest living population in the world. 70% of their diet is sweet potatoes. They're a vegetable-based diet. No wonder they live so long. But there's one population that lives longer than the Okinawa Japanese. Of course, Okinawa Japanese, they were talking about them in the 50s. Now, of course, there's KFC there. They actually have the worst public health statistics in all of Japan, worst obesity rates. There is no, so in Okinawa, they're trying to get people to eat the Okinawa diet. I mean, that's everything. But, and this is happening all over the world. Blue zones are of the past. right? The old Crete diet, not the Olive Garden Crete diet. So, but there's one blue zone that holds strong, and it is, anyone know? Well, in California, the vegetarian Seventh-day Adventists live, 12, 14 years longer than everybody else. So the Okinawa diet is 97% plant-based, and of course there's no meat at all in the vegetarian Adventists. So we can learn a lot from them, and we can actually put it to the test. There's some wonderful things about the Mediterranean diet, very vegetable-centric, which is fantastic, but it's probably in spite of all the extra added oil rather than because of it.